Good morning to our esteemed guest, distinguished delegates, respected panelists, and our dear colleagues. It's a pleasure to welcome you to day 3 of our program, which is India International Conference on Democracy and Election Management. You must be aware of it. Our today's session will be on regulating media campaigns, session that sits right at the intersection of democracy, technology, and public trust. We live in an age where information travels faster than intention, narratives outpace verification, and perception often precedes fact. Media, traditional, digital, and social, has become not just a messenger, but a powerful actor in the electoral ecosystem. Regulating this space, therefore, is no longer a compliance exercise, it's a democratic imperative. To begin with, here we will discuss India's chairship of International IDEA 2026. India, led by the Chief Election Commissioner, has assumed the chairship of the Council of Member States of International IDEA for 2026 with IIIDEM as the nodal agency. India's overarching theme is democracy for an inclusive, peaceful, resilient, and sustainable world. We have identified 2 thematic pillars. The one is reimagining democracy for the future, and the second is independent and professional EMBs for sustainable democracy. India's chairship of International IDEA, where I told you that we have identified 2 thematic pillars, under which we have identified 43 interconnected thematic areas, including 7 for global roadmaps, policy briefs, and tools, 11 for model international electoral standards, 25 for global best practices and innovations in electoral processes. If we talk about IICDEM, IIIDEM under the aegis of ECI and in partnership with International IDEA is organizing the International Conference on Democracy and Election Management. The conference is structured around overarching theme of India's chairship and the thematic priorities of the chairship. Heads and senior officers from close to 45 election management bodies and countries are participating alongside leading experts in democracy, elections, governance, technology, law, media, and communication. To give a brief introduction of the session, this session explores how traditional, digital, and social media influences voter perceptions and pose regulatory challenges. It addresses risk such as misinformation, opaque political advertising, and coordinated manipulation, while emphasizing the need to balance free expression with effective safeguards, drawing on comparative practices. It highlights equitable media access, transparency, and disclosure norms, and the role of independent oversight and multi-stakeholder cooperation in ensuring credible and informed elections. Now we'll begin with the introduction of moderator and the entire panelist. To begin with, Ms. R. Ellis Wes, CEO Delhi, Chief Electoral Officer Delhi. She is an accomplished civil servant currently serving in the government of Delhi, born on 16th August 1979 and domiciled in Tamil Nadu. She is proficient in Tamil, English, Hindi, and Bengali. She is a BSc nursing graduate from Dr. MGR Medical University, Chennai. She has held key administrative positions including SDM, ADM, and District Magistrate in West Bengal, and headed multiple departments in Puducherry and Delhi as Chief Electoral Officer. She successfully conducted the Delhi Legislative Assembly elections 2025 and represented India at the Commonwealth Election Professionals Initiative in Sri Lanka. To introduce our another panelist, who is an international one, Dr. Alberto Ricardo Dallavia, Electoral Commission, Argentina. He is a distinguished Argentine constitutional jurist, academic, and electoral authority. He holds doctorates in constitutional law and political science from the University of Buenos Aires, with further postgraduate training in constitutional law, political science, and human rights in Madrid. His career reflects extensive scholarship, public service, and institutional leadership in constitutional and electoral affairs. To introduce our another panelist, Dr. Arthur Thomas, Antigua Barbuda Electoral Commission. He is a senior lawyer, diplomat, and electoral governance expert with over 30 years of experience. As chairman of the Antigua and Barbuda Electoral Commission, he provides a strategic leadership for national elections, emphasizing integrity and institutional independence. He holds an LLB from the University of West Indies, an MA in International Taxation from Regent University, and is a PhD candidate in Comparative Politics and International Relations. His career spans constitutional law, corporate governance, public administration, and diplomatic service, including as an ambassador to the Czech Republic. Another panelist is Professor Anupama Goyal. She is a professor of law from National University, Delhi. She, with nearly 30 years of experience in constitutional law, judicial administration, gender justice, human rights, and related fields, she has led and contributed to research for institutions including the Election Commission of India and ICSSR, and has published widely in India and abroad. She has held key academic and administrative roles at NLU Delhi and Punjab University. Another panelist of the day is Dr. Akanksha Kaushik, Assistant Professor of Economics at Delhi Technological University, DTU. She, with over 10 years of experience in teaching, research, and academic administration, she holds a degree from the University of Delhi Gokhale, Institute of Politics and Economics, and Jawaharlal Nehru University. She served as a project director for KAP and line survey across all 70 constituencies of Delhi Assembly elections, and her research focuses on applied economics, public policy, electoral studies, and evidence-based governance. Our last panelist is Mr. Sharath Chandra, IIIDEM expert. He is the Director of Public Policy at Samsung and a former 1999 batch Indian Information Service officer with over 2 decades of government experience. He served as OSD to the Prime Minister in 2014 to 2019 elections and as a director at the Election Commission of India, leading voter awareness, accessibility, and media policy initiatives. He has also held senior editorial roles at Doordarshan News and led public policy at Uber, India and South Asia, and Coursera Asia Pacific, an alumnus of IIT Roorkee, IIM Lucknow, and SPA Delhi. He's a gold medalist and has been a visiting faculty at IIM Ahmedabad and IIT Roorkee. Thank you. Now to start the session and to anchor this discussion, we begin with a practitioner who brings deep administrative insight and an on-ground experience in managing media regulations within one of the world's largest democracies. It's my privilege to invite our CEO ma'am to share her perspectives on regulatory frameworks, operational challenges, and evolving best practices in media campaigns oversight. Now the floor is all yours, ma'am. Please give a big round of applause.
Good morning to all. It's my privilege to host the thematic session on responsible media campaign. I'd like to welcome Dr. Alberto Ricardo Dallavia, President Electoral Commission Argentina, and His Excellency Arthur Damas, President Electoral Commission Antigua and Barbuda. So to put the theme in context, we all know that media is, the next slide. Media is considered fourth pillar of democracy. And media in all its forms ensures conduct of free, fair, transparent and inclusive election. EMBs act as a neutral facilitator and setting guidelines for conduct of media, political advertising and use of digital platforms. Traditional media also serve as a primary platform and plays a crucial role in providing credible information to the electors during election time. So, however, with increasing internet and smartphone penetration, the current media scape has seen a paradigm shift, especially with the social media imposing a biggest challenge to the election management body in tackling misinformation and use of AI. Hence, the need for responsible media campaign. So the broader objective of responsible media campaign is to have a useful ally for the election management bodies during election, especially during election time when the media is alert and they highlight the glitches and opine and spread the information at a lightning speed. And they act as an effective tool in combating misinformation, hate speech, and also they provide a mechanism to monitor the paid news and the pre-certification of political advertisement. And they are very effective tool for voter awareness and informed voters participation. Some of the concepts are listed here that will be dealt by the esteemed speaker here. The technical aspect of the presentation will be dealt by the academic experts here. So the phases of media campaign. The responsible media campaign largely comprises of pre-certification when it comes to election management from the perspective of election management body. It largely comprises of pre-certification of political advertisement and is usually carried out by the EMBs to ensure fair play and prevent the misuse of media. And paid news and social media monitoring. Social media campaigns to check the adherence to the model code of conduct. And the primary cornerstone is allocation of equitable sharing time on electronic media. And also to have a robust fact-checking mechanism to counter the misinformation and fake news circulated on social media. The recent challenge of regulating AI and synthetic media is also gains importance when it comes to responsible media campaign. So I would like to highlight some of the institutional and governance framework in India. I will be covering largely the generic aspect of responsible media campaign, whereas the technical aspects will be covered by the academic experts. So in India, we have a hierarchical response architecture, which is vertically integrated across the three levels, starting with the district at the level of a district election officer, who manages the constituency level narratives. And at the level of state level, chief electoral officer manages the region and state specific narratives. And at the national level, Election Commission of India addresses the issue of generic cross-cutting and nationwide misinformation issues. Our response is multi-divisional, comprising of all the branches of election management, such as electronic voting machine, media, political party, and they examines the cases and ensure coordinated technical, legal, and communication response. At the national level, at the higher level, we have an interagency coordination in the form of electronic media monitoring center under the guidance of Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. They ensure the real-time monitoring of misinformation in the electronic media and they share their analytical report with the Election Commission of India. So the important tool which is again vertically integrated, cutting across the three levels, is media certification and monitoring through a mechanism called institutional mechanism called Media Certification and Monitoring Committee. So this also starting with district level, district election officers heads the media certification and monitoring committee, and at the state level, chief electoral officer heads the MCMC. At the national level, ECI oversees the implementation of the guidelines. Our response is time bound with the strict escalation protocols, and also ECI issued a standardized operating procedure for quick response management to standardize the handling of fake news and election related misinformation. So the important cornerstone of our institutional mechanism is pre-certification of political advertisement. This is mandated by the Supreme Court of India, which requires that prior clearance of political advertisement is required to be obtained from the Media Certification and Monitoring Committee, which I already explained. It's established at all the three levels in electoral management. MCMC at national level, that it contents of all the political advertisements are scrutinized and thoroughly and certified by the MCMC. And the Delhi MCMC of CEO Delhi certifies the political advertisement of all recognized national parties, which can be used across India. The legal action violation of the guidelines of Supreme Court of India ensures that it will be treated as contempt of court and sometimes may result in seizure of equipment also. The same committee monitor the paid news, and especially from the angle of expenditure monitoring. Whenever this paid news is found, this is incorporated in the election expenditure of the candidate. There is a separate dedicated cell for monitoring the political advertisement. That is also active at the three level, at the district, state and the national level, especially monitoring the print and electronic media to check whether only the certified advertisements are published, and also other media content, especially social media content, whether it adheres to the model code of conduct. And as per the RP Act, Representation of People Act, it is mandated that all the posters and pamphlets should have a printer and publisher's name published in the each posters and pamphlets. The important cornerstone of responsible media campaign, and which is already institutionalized by Election Commission of India, is to have an allotment of broadcast and telecast time to political parties, to especially to the national parties and the recognized state parties, for airing their views on the state-owned broadcast channels. And the digital time vouchers are being issued by ECI through IT platform. So apart from this, all over the world, all the electoral management bodies are been handling the misinformation and fake news and use of AI. They are having a robust mechanism to tackle the issue. Australian election management body, they have established a disinformation register, and it compares the spread of fake news, and it lists out the incidents of disinformation and what is the actual information, and also the remedial action taken by the Election Commission. And German EMB, on the same line, they are also having a web page published that's called Fact Against Fake News, in which it serves as an authentic, official, neutral and reputable source of information regarding the entire election process. And during in 2019, Brazil election management body, they have launched this program, Combating Disinformation Program, which brought together 60 participants, organizations, including fact-checking organization and political parties. To address the jurisdictional and cross-border challenges, Argentinian electoral management body, they organized a workshop for exchange of experiences on network information monitoring in collaboration with Electoral Tribunal of Panama. The workshop addressed the crucial issues like monitoring social networks, campaign expenditure in digital milieu, and propagation of fake news and disinformation. So the recently to handle the social media content, the France Election Commission notified the Facebook for taking down the political advertisement which was published in the Facebook, which is in violation of mandatory campaign period, which was published beyond the mandatory campaign period of 48 hours. And Germany, to ensure the fair play, Germany, the press can publish the election manifesto, campaign manifesto of main government party and also opposition party free of charge as a reference material for readers. So European Union also have a code of practice on disinformation. It commits platforms, advertisers and media partners across EU to cooperate on transparency and. So on the same line of Australian disinformation register and the Germany EMP's web page, India also have myth versus reality register. It was launched by ECA and it is published in all the web pages of Chief Electoral Officer, and it's a comprehensive repository. It's a one-stop platform for credible, authenticated election-related information, and it's in a user-friendly format, and it gets updated continuously to include the latest debunked myths. This is the example of pre-certified political advertisement issued by the Media Certification and Monitoring Committee at the state level. The comments of the content of the political advertisement were vetted and scrutinized and vetted by the committee, and the comments shared with the political party to change the political advertisement in accordance with the Model Code of Conduct and the in compliance of Representation of People Act. This is one second case study related to countering fake news and misinformation. There was a fake news circulated in the social media claiming that NRIs can vote online in national elections. So ECA, Election Commission of India, took note of it instantly and published the detailed response to that fake news, and it got widely circulated, and the FIR penal action also taken against. So these are all the challenges facing for the ensuring the responsible media campaign by the election management body, which mostly related with social media and use of AI and use of a digital platform. That includes authenticity verification and fixing the responsibility and accountability on AI generated content and the advertisement in the digital platform. And the biggest challenge is, as we all know, deepfake videos and audio. All the EMPs are addressing and solving the issue of individual fake news and misinformation issues. But however, when the coordinated misinformation campaign through automated bots, that really poses challenge to the EMPs, especially when EMPs communication channels are not that much fast when compared to these automated bots. In the digital age, paid news and political advertising also plays a very important role, and these are all presented as a sponsored content by the influencers, meme creators, and it's published as a satire. There are legal and regulatory challenges because existing election laws does not define AI generated content, and it does not include synthetic media. There are cross-border and jurisdictional challenge because disinformation may arise from anywhere, from abroad also. And we as EMBs lack the authority beyond our national borders. So the way forward is mostly in the form of deployment of advanced IT application by the EMBs, especially AI-enabled election information monitoring system and the real-time monitoring of and detection of fake AI-generated messages, videos, and audios, and reviewing and updating the election laws to regulate the new age media, and also addressing the accountability gap in the existing election laws. And to enhance the transparency, it's essential to include the pre-certification of online ads also, and also disclosure in of AAUs. And the last but not least, the voter awareness and media literacy through citizen literacy campaigns and sensitization of journalists. So with this, I would like, the expert, academic experts present here, they will be dealing with the technical aspect of responsible media campaign. So thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for setting such a strong foundational lens rooted in practice, policy, and pragmatism. As we widen our aperture, it's important to learn from comparative international experiences. Electoral regulation doesn't exist in silos. It evolves through shared learning. For the same, I would like to invite Mr. Alberto, representing the Electoral Commission of Argentina, to offer insights into Argentina's regulatory approach, especially in managing political advertising and media accountability. Sir, we look forward to your perspectives. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's for me a great pleasure to be here today in representing of National Electoral Court from Argentina. And first of all, thank you for the Election Commission of India for the invitation. In first time, I reference to different aspects of Argentine system, and then I talk a little about the media regulations. This one, no? It's okay? Yes. Oh, in 1994, 30 years again before, in Argentina, we had a constitutional reform, an important constitutional reform after the transition to democracy. We had the transition to democracy 40 years before. Our country is a presidential country and federal country. And the Article 37 is a new article, introduce the suffrage and equal opportunities for men and women to access elective and partisan position. We have a history in 1916, in last century, we had an important law, Sanz Peña law, who introduced the men's suffrage. And then with law 3010, we introduced women's suffrage too. That's a time of Eva Perón, who is in the photo. So men vote in 1916 and women in 1951. The constitutional reform increased the participation. So in first period, in 1991, we had a law with gender quotas, 30% of gender quota. And now, after 1917, we have a parity of alternation. So the consequence is our Congress, National Congress, in this moment has 43% women deputies and 43 senators women. This is an important right in Argentina. We had a lot of law and different means to increase the participation of young people, on people who is in jail. So that are the consequence of constitutional reform. I am president of the National Electoral Court. This is in the judicial power. We are judges, 3 judges in the National Electoral Court, and we had 24 federal courts with electoral jurisdiction in each provinces. We have 24 provinces in Argentina. We are a federal country. The electoral court rulings have the effect of being plenary decisions in the first instance judge with electoral jurisdiction and for the national electoral votes that are constituted in the 34 22 electoral districts. So our jurisprudence is obligatory to the other tribunals. This is the control. We have all the control in the electoral process. And now, quickly, I talk you about the last reforms in my country. Last year, we had legislative parliamentary elections, and the government, by law, introduced the single paper ballot. We had a discussion in 2016 about the electronic system, but it's not go ahead. But last year we introduced the single paper ballot. At right there is a model, and it was very good, successful, and for transparency and neutrality, because we had in Argentina 700 political parties. So we had a lot of political parties, national political parties, 42. So this reform increased the power to the people in contrary sense of the parties. The problem for the next election, next year we have election presidential, is the coordination between national election and local elections, because we are different systems. In all Latin America, they are electronic ballot in Venezuela, in Brazil, and Paraguay. In all the rest of Latin America, we have single paper ballot, and Uruguay, there is my colleague from Uruguay. Uruguay has party ballot as at Argentina in the last times. Okay, now about regulation of media, that Ali says there are different models, and I think these meetings are very important to change opinions, and there is a very international problem in all the countries, the regulation of media. For example, in my country, 10 years ago, the most important campaigns were on TV or newspaper, but just now they have contributions to campaign were in the media. At least they have. There is a model in Latin America about the United States model. In the United States, the principle is freedom of speech. And for that reason, there are not regulation over the medias in campaign. For example, that's an important ideological debate. In my country, our president, Milei, is in the line of President Trump, and he is friend of Elon Musk, and he thinks it's not necessary regulations about the media. But it's not the situation on Brazil. Alice refers to Brazil. Brazil has hard law regulation about the media. And of course, the European Union, who has regulation about the personal information. In our country, since 2019, we have different agreements with platforms. We did agreement with platforms, with Google, YouTube, and so on. And in this agreement, we according that the judges and the procurators, when have notice about fake news or deep fakes or different situations that put in crisis the neutrality and the transparency in the information on the election, they help us to go ahead with investigations. And in the case of Argentina, electoral judge, we have jurisdiction over criminals criminals trials about election issues. So we in this moment we begin different investigations about that thing. But the the reason that agreements we did each election when we began one electoral process, we did a big meeting in our court about national parties and NGOs and the platforms, and so people we invite to put in the opinion the idea of neutrality and the clear rules for the election. We began in 2019 and we continue each election with this idea. For us were very useful, and the reason is in Argentina we haven't rules, we haven't law about media regulation. So in the electoral code we had to go ahead about the jurisprudence and the practices. So I think maybe it's interesting for you to know our practice in this area. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for commission. I will expect this conference be useful to go advance in this important.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for adding this global perspective, which reminds us that while contexts differ, democratic challenges often rhyme. Our next speaker brings a unique vantage point from a small state democracy where scale is compact, but stakes are no less significant. May I invite H.E. Arthur G.B. Thomas, sir, from the Antigua Barbuda Electoral Commission to share experiences on regulating media campaigns in closely knit political and media environments. Your Excellency, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Good morning, all. Distinguished members of the panel, Excellencies, fellow commissioners, delegates. It is indeed a profound privilege to address this thematic session of the Indian International Conference on Democracy and Election Management. And we are gathered here at the Bharat Mandapan in the mother of democracy under a theme that is as ambitious as it is urgent. Democracy for an inclusive, peaceful, resilient, and sustainable world. My remarks today focus on the regulation of media campaigns, an issue that sits at the volatile intersection of democratic freedom and systemic vulnerability. In this digital age, election management bodies are being called to a new vocation, not as censors or censors who stifle speech, but as custodians of the architecture of trust. Election management bodies are indeed the custodians of fairness, transparency, and public trust. And election management bodies must establish as its core principles and objectives the following, as this slide would show: proportionate regulation, protecting expression, ensuring equitable competition, and building credible elections. Democracy today thrives within an information ecosystem which has been fundamentally transformed, and I would say fundamentally transformed over the last few years. Media is no longer a conduit of information. Rather, it is a structuring force that determines how elections are contested and how institutions lose or win legitimacy. Whilst we are forced to come to the realization that a smartphone, and I would call it smartphone democracy, brings both unprecedented access and unprecedented risks across every jurisdiction, we consequently face a common set of systemic risks. These risks are false or misleading claims that circulate faster than institutions can verify or respond, voters unable to identify who is speaking, who is paying, and for what strategic purpose, algorithms distorting the principle of one person, one vote, and voter participation replaced by confusion and by mistrust. On this slide, we categorize that all as velocity without verification, asymmetric amplification, opacity in advertising, and erosion in confidence. And the regulatory question that we should ask ourselves is not whether to regulate, but how we do so proportionately. Global experience points to a conversion around 4 pillars of democratic stewardship. The first being equity of access, ensuring every candidate has an equal opportunity to be heard through non-discriminatory access to broadcast and print media. 2, transparency and disclosure, empowering voters to make informed judgments by knowing who is speaking, who sponsors the content, and how it is funded. Balance and responsibility, meaning maintaining a democratic ecosystem through proportionate coverage, avoidance of systemic silencing, and safeguards against hate speech. And institutional neutrality. Regulation must be administered by executive management bodies that are independent in spirit. We must lead through consultation, not confrontation with the media estate. The following principles are universal, or ought to be universal. Principle 1 being equity of access. Equity of access meaning non-discriminatory access to broadcast, print, and electronic media, uniform advertising rates and transparent placement rules for all candidates, and legal protection against exclusionary or punitive pricing practices. Principle 2, transparency and disclosure, mandatory clear labeling of all political advertising, full identification of sponsors and disclosure of funding sources, and public revelation of targeting perimeters in the digital context. Principle 3, balance and responsibility, meaning that non-partisan and proportionate coverage across all media outlets should apply. The avoidance of systemic silencing or overexposure of specific candidates. Safeguards against hate speech and incitement threatening peaceful participation. And the fourth principle, institutional neutrality. Regulation administered by independent election management bodies. Enforcement mechanisms insulated from political interference, and standards developed through consultation, not confrontation with the media, as previously mentioned. To move from the abstract to the operational, allow me to share the experience of Antigua and Barbuda. Our experience suggests that the clarity of law often matters more than the size of the state. Under the Representation of the People Act, the Antigua and Barbuda Electoral Commission, ABEC, is legally mandated to ensure equitable allocation. Media owners are not merely observers in our view. They are statutory partners in fairness. ABEC has under the law the authority to regulate the use of print, broadcast, and electronic media, especially during the election period. Media must be bound to provide non-discriminatory access to political parties and actors. Media must allocate time and access equitably. And the statutes mandate that the media promotes fair and balanced reporting standards. So to be clear, ABEC, notwithstanding what I have just said, avoids editorial control, but drives procedural integrity once elections are called. Once elections are formally called in Antigua and Barbuda, the Electoral Commission activates a defined and operational sequence of events to ensure, as the slides would indicate, 4 objectives. The first being they convene with the stakeholders. Secondly, they agree on timelines. Thirdly, they publish the arrangements. And fourthly, coordinate logistics. The lesson is therefore clear that effective regulation does not require high-tech complexity. It requires procedural integrity. So certainly in our organization, we look at content and conduct in terms of media. We stress that there is no editorial control and that the Commission does not act as a censor, but promotes responsible self-regulation. We require clear labeling, mandating identification of all political advertising to prevent voter deception. In terms of content standards, we promote strict avoidance of discriminatory language or inflammatory content that threatens peace. And we insist on what we call a blackout period immediately before the poll. And this essentially ensures that the voter has a cooling period when he can, in his own space and time, make an assessment as to how to exercise his right to vote. On the enforcement side, we have strong enforcement mechanisms. There are statutory penalties, which are graduated from fines all the way up to imprisonment in the event of serious breaches. Access control, strict accreditation rules apply to media during the conduct of an election. And in terms of a legal framework, media owners are legally bound to non-discriminatory practices. We must be honest that in all the traditional models, we are stretched. Our traditional models are being tested by the borderless nature of the digital campaign. Social media platforms operate beyond national licensing. Micro-targeting fragments the national conversation into thousands of private conversations. Bots and deep fakes challenge the ability to regulate in real time. So these are not small state problems or large state problems. They are existential, democratic problems currently being debated from New Delhi to Brussels and certainly to Antigua and Barbuda. There are 5 practical strategies that I propose that EMBs worldwide would adopt. And these are, firstly, hybrid regulations. Hybrid in that it combines statutory rules with negotiated codes of conduct for digital platforms, as the law alone is insufficient. Where the law is slow, cooperation must be fast. Secondly, functional transparency. Even without full content control, we require sponsor disclosure, public ad repositories, and clear identification of political messaging. Meaning, political messages, in other words, must be archived and auditable. Procedural fairness, focus regulations on access, rates, timing, and disclosure rather than content policing. If the process is seen as legitimate, the outcome is more likely to be accepted. And then, finally, there is public education. Media literacy is key. We see the power of this principle right here in India, where initiatives like the Systemic Voters Education and Electoral Participation, I think it's called SVEEP, what's it? SVEEP, okay. Have turned voter education into a mass movement and enlightened the electorate in the ultimate, and as an enlightened electorate is the ultimate firewall against manipulation. International cooperation. We all here present in India. My friend from Argentina is here. And so we appreciate the importance of international cooperation, as we cannot regulate effectively in isolation. Sharing standards, sharing intelligence, sharing best practices across networks is key. The IICDEM is key. Networks such as the newly launched ECINet is also important to match the global nature of digital influence and is in fact indispensable. What then is our path forward? Regulating media campaigns is not about controlling speech. It's about protecting democratic choice. Through fair competition, informed participation, and public confidence. So in closing, let us hold fast to one central proposition. Regulating the media campaign is not an act of control. It is an act of protection. I've repeated myself for emphasis. As independent election managers, we are the stewards of the information environment. We ensure that competition remains fair and that the pulse of democracy remains steady. To conclude, regulation is not the enemy of the free press. Rather, it is the dharma, the essential duty of the election manager to ensure that the noise of the campaign does not drown out the voice of the voter. In our quest for a resilient future, balanced media regulation is not a constraint on our freedom. It is the very condition that makes our freedom meaningful. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for highlighting how professionality and context matter deeply in regulatory design. As we move forward, it's essential to ground these experiences in constitutional principles and legal doctrine. Regulation must always walk the tightrope between control and freedom. And for the same, would like to invite Professor Anupama Goyal from NLU to unpack the legal and constitutional dimensions of media regulation, including free speech, reasonable restrictions, and judicial perspectives. To ma'am, over to you.
There. Yeah. Yeah, good morning to all of you. Namaskar. To all the dignitaries on the dais, off the dais, a very warm welcome to India, to Argentina representation and Antigua and Barbados. My friends, colleagues, and all present in the audience. It's my proud privilege to talk about two basic themes under the theme which has been chosen by CEO Delhi, that is responsible media campaign. And I will be talking on electoral misinformation and disinformation, concepts, risks, and threat landscape, along with international norms and institutional responses. So because of constraint of time, I'll be just skimming through my slides, the main points only. So first of all, let us understand the meaning of misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. We usually use the word fake news, which is normatively not correct. So therefore, we'll have to see what do we mean by misinformation, that is, which is false, but shared in good faith. So whatever WhatsApp forwards coming from our relatives, friends, that is basically misinformation. That is false, but shared in good faith. Disinformation, which is slightly more dangerous, that is false and deliberate. That is coordinated campaigns designed to deceive and manipulate. And malinformation, that is factually true, but it is used as selective leaks, private data release to destroy credibility, and they are in a way weaponized. So why all these distinctions, misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation is important? Because our regulatory responses are also different. We ordinarily correct misinformation, we disrupt, sanction disinformation, and we balance rights in cases of malinformation. So we are going to discuss here whether regulation, how to regulate, but regulation in the clear thinking of that it should not harm our free speech. And also, it doesn't harm free speech if we are regulating all these things, but because we'll have to regulate it because it is threatening our democratic infrastructure. Why and how it is threatening our democratic infrastructure? It's from 3 rounds, like it is going to suppress voters, it's faking voting rules, it's basically disturbing electoral voters and everybody. And also it erodes the trust in the electoral bodies, election commissions, courts, media. So it's an institutional problem also. Also, it's a security threats for officials, journalists, election, the violence also. And if it escalates, we are talking about disinformation, if it gets escalated, there can be problem to election happening, electoral stability also, and ultimately it can be a threat for democratic instability. Now, what should be done and what are the international practices, best practices? I'm taking examples from 2 countries, Australia and Singapore. And basically, they are, most of the countries which we studied, they are basically of the view that censorship does not perform properly. Instead, there must be evidence-based responses. Like we must have strong election authorities, independent EMBs, rapid official communication, real-time debunking, and also we'll have to take platform design authorities properly so that they can take care of risk assessments, they can tackle inauthentic behavior, they can label takedowns, and also must be transparent. Also, pre-bunking, real-time checks, news, opinion separation has to be done by media, and they must be checking the facts also before the disclosures. Media literacy, we all know, is very, very important, and it is going to give a kind of democratic resilience for all of us. Now, apart from all this, we'll have to connect it with human rights framework, which gives us an idea how and why to connect it with electoral integrity. First of all, I'm taking international norms. That is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights 1948 talks about Article 19, which guarantees freedom of opinion and expression through media. Article 21 talks about that will of people must be expressed through periodic and genuine elections. All these rights are not hierarchical, they are mutually reinforcing. Similarly, International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights 1966 talks about, protects not just the act of voting, but also the conditions that make voter choices free and genuine. These are all legally binding things, and we'll have to protect from manipulation, coercion, information distortions. This is relevant for all the state parties who have signed, ratified ICCPR. So this is the human rights framework which prevents regulation, but only within strict limits. Then we come to fundamental principles which have been given for platform governance during elections, specifically by UNESCO. And I'm just touching the 7 principles. Human rights due diligence, like periodic risk assessments, the voting process integrity has to be ensured, and you will have to take care of gender and cultural inclusions. Independent, effective regulation must be there. There must be public accountable regulators which are ensuring free and non-political and economic interference. Then platform transparency and accountability are talking about, where they are saying equitable policies must be there so that algorithmic curation can be done, moderation can be done. Then user education and critical thinking, which talks about media literacy, and we just discussed that it enhances resilience of a democracy. Then enhanced protections during elections and crisis. That is, you will have to see that election periods are very sensitive, and you will have to take extra care during that. Protection of qualified moderators. There can be human and automated moderation processes who knows the language. They know how to report, how to entertain the complaint procedures also. And we all know freedom of expression is a foundation for democratic resilience. Therefore, these all are fundamental principles which are giving me some idea what we are doing internationally. And now we are coming to the soft regulations, that is non-binding global guidelines on election-related media regulation, which has been given by International IDEA, that is Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance. It talks about basically that there should be no censorship, but responsible participation by all the stakeholders. There must be truthful and accurate posting. No hate speech should be there. There must be context-sensitive communication during elections. So in a way, they are relying upon voluntary compliances, and they are trying to have a balance between freedom of speech and shared responsibility between citizens and state. And they are talking there should be no coercion. Another non-binding global guideline comes from Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, and also from OSCE Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights. And they are emphasizing that there is no one size fits all. And they are emphasizing upon two minimum requirements which are non-negotiable, that is proportionality and effective and timely remedies. And they are considering platforms, social media platforms, as electoral actors, and they are not neutral bystanders. So according to them, the election regulation must be flexible, proportionate, and remedial, and not punitive, centralized, or censorial. These are the global standards. And now we'll examine regional frameworks, which give me some idea about how particular region in international arena is working to deal with electoral integrity and regulation of social medias. Firstly, we'll take up Africa, that is African Commission on Human and People's Rights. We call it Banjul Charter also. And its resolution of 2024 is talking specifically about internet shutdowns and elections. It says, it emphasizes upon digital access as human rights enabler. So they are saying that if you are giving access of digitalization, internet medias, and you are not disrupting any kind of internet services, that is kind of human rights implementation, and that must be there. 10 days ago, on 13th of January only, this African Commission took hold of Uganda Communications Commission, which gave directions to suspend all mobile network operators and internet service providers, to block all the public internet services, including access to social media platforms and web browsing, etc., which was taken very seriously. And African Commission, it took its resolution, recalled its resolution, and strictly for strengthening electoral integrity, and stopped down and requested UCC that you can't do all this. So in a way, they are taking digital access very, very seriously. With respect to America, there is International American Commission on Human Rights resolution again in 2024, which is creating a kind of humanization all through. They are considering election observers as human rights defenders, overall election observation as human rights defense, and online cyberspaces as electoral human rights. So you can see all through in regional areas, all through there is humanization, collaboration, but with the non-binding rules, Now we come to ASEAN, and that is another region which is we are also part of. India is also part of that region, but not a member nation of ASEAN. ASEAN Guidelines on Management of Government Information in Combating Fake News and Disinformation, 2023. It talks about media literacy, interagency cooperation, and also government, media, and stakeholders must take care of accuracy, transparency, accountability. And there has to be all coordination through all these agencies. And This strong human rights framework with cooperative norms can be seen through everywhere in regional areas. Now we come to case studies, and I have taken 2-3 case studies, one from Singapore, another from America, and the third one is from European Union. To start with Singapore, which gives me a very restrictive ex ante, that is prescriptive, preemptive, precautionary approach kind of a regulatory model. And here we are taking care of 3 acts basically. One is Parliamentary Elections Act of 1954. Then there is the Protection of Online Falsehoods and Manipulation Act of 2019. And recently they have come up with Elections Integrity of Online Advertising Amendment Act of 2024, which has come into force in 2025 only. So they here under these acts, I'm just clubbing all this, they can issue corrective directions, they can issue stop communications and also disabling directions, like to target corrections, they can issue that the internet intermediary can attach correction notice and also can stop communications and can take down whatever disclosures, whatever material is there on the internet. So this is a strong approach, preemptory approach, where executive is strong, statutory control is strong, and they are also shifting from regulation of form, not only form, but also content. Then we come to USA. Here you can see strong speech protection because of their First Amendment primacy and institutional fragmentation. And here there are so many bodies doing their own work, like electoral management bodies. They are not the primary regulators of digital elections. Social media platforms, they are quasi-regulators through private governance mechanisms. And Congress is accountable, but no operational control is there with them. And mainly the courts are the latent actors. So whatever happens after that, they come into picture and try to protect free speech primarily. For that, we are going to discuss 2 cases. One is NetChoice versus Paxson, and also connected is NetChoice versus Moody of 2024. Here in these cases, many US states, and examples are Texas and Florida, they tried to control or restrict platform content which is being posted on platforms. But Supreme Court came in between, it intervened, and they said that editorial judgment of platforms has to be protected because it is consistent with free speech, whatever is there in the Constitution of USA, and state regulation cannot violate First Amendment of the Constitution. So US model is prioritizing free speech, giving primacy to free speech, and maximum speech is there with minimum state control. Whereas EU hybrid model, it's rights-centered, and platform obligations are also taken care of. Here, it protect rights, it's regulating operational areas with DSA, and it balances speech with electoral integrity. So it's talking again about proportionality, necessity test for restrictions. It's a platform level accountability is also there. So platforms are going to be responsible for systemic threats, and they are not going to act as code of conducts, but there can be punishments, enforcement, penalties also. So it's slightly stricter than the earlier model. And here I'm taking 2 cases, Sanchez versus France in 2023, which is talking about shared responsibility. French politician was held responsible for monitoring his own account. Similarly, in Bradshaw versus others versus UK 2025, they are again talking about European hybrid logic, but they are saying that free speech must be there, but contextual limitations must be there to ensure that there are no foreign interferences. So they are checking foreign interferences also. Now I come to what we are doing, what India is doing specifically when it has got the chairship of IDEA. It came at a moment when our elections are reshaped by media saturation, and there are democratic anxieties also, because elections are not only constitutional mechanisms for India, they are mass events. And we are doing it as a national performance with participation, legitimacy, and also there are now everywhere digital screens throughout. And 2019 general election has shown this decisive shift. So democratic resilience in India is grounded in strong institutions, and Election Commission of India has come up as the most authoritative and professional body to regulate elections and to safeguard inclusion, credibility, and it's an unparalleled institution throughout the world. These are the constitutional foundations in the next slide, which I'll just skim through. These are adult suffrages provided since independence, equality of vote and inclusiveness is there. And ECI, as I've told, it's superintending, directing and control of elections throughout. Articles 14 and 19, ensuring equality and free speech. Representation of People's Act 1951 talks about accounting of campaign expenditure, corrupt practices, and 48 hours of compulsory silence. Then regulation of media, social media and campaigning comes with MCC. MCC is regulating all kinds of media, model code of conduct. Then there is voluntary code of ethics came up in 2019, which is adopted by major social media platforms. So there is co-regulation, and they are co-regulating, and it's non-statutory. And also paid news, etc. has already been discussed by ma'am. Then digital governance, data protection and voter safeguards. Here we are having IT rules 2021, and it requires platforms to take down orders, and also there is grievance redressal mechanism. DPDP Act is also providing consent-based processing of voter data. And judicial oversight and electoral integrity, there are two cases which I have taken up. One is the same, which is Secretary to Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. Here under Article 142, pre-certification has been done, which has been mandated and extended to digital and social media also. And in Chandrababu Naidu, in 2019, Supreme Court has directed increase of VVPAT examination from 1 to 5 EVMs per assembly, which is giving me a kind of electoral transparency stance. Now, specifically for AI, deepfakes and platform manipulation, this is ECI has recognized AI and deepfake as threat to voter autonomy, as also they'll have to be taken as manipulations. Yeah, and directions are there that AI generated synthetic content must be removed immediately. And also there is Model Code Advisory Committee along with DAU, which is checking all this. So there is a structured engagement with major platforms. And also there is a WhatsApp helpline issued by ECI, where voters can also participate and report for misinformation, fake news, deepfakes, and MCC violations. So in a way, this is a bottom-up monitoring which is there in India presently. Rapid verification and corrective action is there, which enhances institutional trust and public participation. So in a way, social media is found to be a connective tissue of society. Use it responsibly for good and lift others up, not to tear them down. Digital citizenship means using the internet in a responsible, legal, safe, respectful way. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Sure. Thank you for reminding us that regulation without constitutional wisdom is like a compass without the true north. Economics now enters the conversation because media campaigns are not just narratives, they are markets, incentives, and expenditures. For the same, I would like to invite Dr. Akanksha to share insights on political advertising, media economics, and the financial drivers that shape campaign behavior. Dr. Kaushik, please.
Namaste and good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Akanksha Kaushik from Delhi Technological University. Today, I will discuss how democracies across regions are responding to growing challenges of misinformation during elections and what best practices and innovations can inform more resilient electoral ecosystems. Election campaigning has evolved alongside digital technologies. Since the late 2000s, social media platforms have become central tools for political mobilization and messaging. We are now entering the generative AI era, where text, images, audio, deepfakes can be produced rapidly at scale and with high levels of realism. This technological shift has significantly altered the global risk environment. According to the World Economic Forum, global risk reports, misinformation and disinformation consistently rank among the top global risks, particularly in relation to democratic processes. Election misinformation today goes beyond rumors or false claims. It includes coordinated narratives, manipulated content, and synthetic media. Importantly, this is not a standalone problem. It sits with the broader information ecosystem involving media, digital platforms, institutions, and citizens. This context has expanded the role of EMBs as trusted and authoritative sources of factual electoral information. Misinformation directly erodes public trust in electoral institutions and undermines informed voter choice. Reactive or ad hoc responses are no longer sufficient, especially with the speed and scale enabled by generative AI. EMBs are now central actors, not just administrators, requiring proactive, preventive engagement and ecosystem level collaboration rather than content by content control. Synthetic media ranges from manipulated content to fully AI generated deepfakes. What makes deepfakes particularly dangerous is their realism, scalability, and ability to be personalized. Global cases from the US, Slovakia, and UK, and many other countries demonstrate how quickly such content can disrupt electoral trust before verification mechanisms can respond. No single institution can counter misinformation alone. The framework is organized around 6 interlinked dimensions of defense, which together form a whole of society response to information disorder. Each subsequent section of this presentation examines one dimension in detail, drawing on comparative global experiences and concrete country examples. The strength of a nation's response depends on its institutional infrastructure, coordinated mechanisms, and ability to move from reactive debunking to systemic resilience. The first dimension focuses on legal clarity, institutional independence, and structured national strategies. Effective systems rely on clear mandates, coordinated vertical and horizontal governance, crisis management cycles, and dedicated disinformation response teams. Importantly, institutional learning through audits and evaluation ensures continuous improvement. Countries like India, Sweden, Canada, France, and Lithuania demonstrate that clear mandates, multi-agency coordination, and permanent monitoring units can transform misinformation governance from reactive intervention into accountable rights respecting management. A strong best practice comes from Ireland, where a formal national counter-disinformation strategy embeds election integrity into national security. Planning clarifies institutional roles and treats misinformation as a standing governance responsibility rather than a temporary election issue. Proactive communication positions EMBs as primary source of credible election information. This includes maintaining a multi-platform presence, responding rapidly to public queries, using pre-bunking strategies, ensuring accessibility, and partnering with trusted stakeholders. Counter disinformation is also a competition for attention and visibility. A key best practice is India's myth versus reality and verify before you amplify initiatives, which position the EMB as the first and most credible source of election information. Examples from India, France, Brazil, Mexico, South Africa, and US show that repeated, impartial communication is essential. Evidence consistently shows that misinformation spreads faster than corrections, making sustained engagement critical for maintaining trust. This dimension 3 highlights network verification, crowdsourced tip lines, standardized claim typologies, AI-assisted detection, and unified dissemination. Pipelines allow fact-checking to operate at scale. Corrections must travel along the same pathways as misinformation. Initiatives like Verificado in Mexico, Reverso in Argentina, Real 411 in South Africa, and Full Fact in the UK show how strong ecosystems connect citizens, media, technology, and institutions into a single verification pipeline rather than isolated fact-checking efforts. Mexico's Verificado model, where competing media organizations, civil society, and digital platforms worked under a single verification label, enabling corrections to travel across television, print, and digital media at scale. Long-term resilience depends on media and information literacy, public interest journalism, and inclusive civic education. This includes curriculum integration, innovative pedagogy, teacher training, and sustained support for pluralistic media ecosystem. A leading best practice comes from Finland, where media and information literacy is integrated across curricula, libraries, and adult education, ensuring that citizens of all ages are equipped to recognize manipulation techniques. India training booth-level officers BLO to spread awareness on how to spot deepfakes. The key insight is that the media literacy, journalism, and civic participation must reinforce one another as a system. Misinformation is often amplified by the platform design choices rather than individual content alone. This dimension focuses on co-regulation, transparency in recommender systems, transparent political advertising, researcher access to data, user empowerment, and governance of synthetic media. The European Union, France, Ireland, India, California, and Spain demonstrate a shift towards system-level accountability. A strong best practice is found in the European Union, where platform obligations under systemic regulations link transparency, independent audits, and fines calibrated to global turnover, shifting governance from content by content moderation to system-level accountability. The last but not the least, dimension 6, gender sensitivity and social inclusion. This information disproportionately targets women, minorities, and marginalized groups. Effective governance must recognize gendered and identity-based harm, address online abuse, and ensure inclusive communication, and adopt intersectional institutional practices. Canada, Finland, and North Macedonia show how gender-sensitive analysis and legal reforms can be embedded into election management and digital governance. A notable best practice is Canada's gender-based analysis plus framework, which is embedded into election management, communication strategies, and cybersecurity policy, ensuring that governance responses account for differential impacts across gender and social groups. The 6 dimensions are interconnected and mutually reinforcing. An effective national defense is built on single pillar, but on the strength of entire system. Weakness is one, undermines the other. Proactive communication is less effective without social media literacy, and platform accountability is toothless without a strong institutional framework. The core strategic shift from policing individual pieces of content to strengthening ecosystem resilience. The objective is not endless content control, but cultivating a robust information environment that supports democratic choice. Building resilience is a continuous process. As technologies evolve, governance framework must remain adaptive, collaborative, and innovative. Before I conclude, I would like to briefly introduce the economic term public good. These are the goods that are non-excludable and non-rivalrous. And best examples are information integrity and electoral trust, which markets alone tend to underprovide. So state intervention is therefore required to ensure the provision and protection. The most resilient democracies will be those that treat information integrity not as a problem to be solved, but as a public good to be continuously cultivated. Thank you.
Thank you so much. As our esteemed guest and delegates have gone for a bilateral meeting, we'll proceed accordingly. And for the next, thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Now I'd like to invite for an analytical lens and data-driven, extremely relevant. For the same, I would like to invite Shri Sharat Chandra, representing Samsung India, to offer the industry perspective on technology platform responsibility and emerging tools to counter misinformation and artificial amplification. Sir, please welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, esteemed co-panelists and the audience for this opportunity. I'm fully aware of the perils of being the last speaker. On one hand, the audience has already listened very carefully to the many esteemed speakers before me, and they have been extremely enlightening in whatever they have said. On the other hand, I'm also aware of the pressures of time. And keeping that in mind, I am going to be extremely brief, and I shall try to give a perspective that is a bit different from what has already been given, and shall keep my remarks extremely short. And in doing so, I shall draw upon largely my experience earlier in the Election Commission of India and in the government in various information and communication related responsibilities. Now, also what I should do is talk about the phase that comes even before regulation. You know, we can only regulate what we understand well. And perhaps if we understand it well enough, then the need to coercively regulate or to strictly regulate it is reduced to that extent. And therefore, it's important to understand the evolving media landscape today and how it is different from what it has been in the past. And what has already been said a little bit is algorithm-driven digital and social media, wherein virality comes through algorithms. And the algorithms also ensure that a large proportion of the audience perhaps only sees what the algorithm dictates that audience to see. Also, peer-to-peer messaging apps, for instance, like WhatsApp, ensure that virality no longer needs mass media. So we're no longer talking about big media platforms churning out news that may not be credible or information that may not be true, but messaging apps transferring this from person to person to person very, very quickly on their mobile phones. And this can be done very selectively. So it's possible that in one neighborhood, which has 100 families, there may be 20 families. And those families, everyone's smartphone may have a certain information which may be untrue. And the remaining 80 may not even know that any such thing exists. So that's the kind of age we are living in. And therefore, technology offers you more options to communicate, which is very good, but also more avenues to mislead. And in a society like India, more possibilities to sow discord and confusion. There are also very interesting plays here about shifting demographics. You know, we used to live once upon a time in a society that was predominantly rural. That's no longer the case. We have now urban amenities available in rural India as well. And therefore, we have very little of really rural in the conventional sense. We have either urban or what I call rurban, rural-urban. Also, if we have, say, about 700 districts in India today, there was a time a few decades ago when at least 500 of these districts were fairly homogeneous in their population. That is no longer the case because people shift from one place to another. And you have large numbers of people shifting, for instance, from the northern states to the southern states, from the northeast of the country, across the length and breadth of the country, and more generally from the rural areas to the urban areas. And therefore, most of the districts of India today present a more heterogeneous population, speaking different languages, having very different cultures, very different festivals, very different ways of doing things. And therefore, when EMBs communicate to such an audience, the messaging needs to be sufficiently nuanced. Now, why this matters also is that media consumption patterns are changing. We no longer exist in a time when newspapers or television and radio news were seen by large numbers of people. The focus, especially among the audience that is under 40, is more on consuming content on smartphones, which is essentially social media, and the role of individual influencers and hyper-local platforms, hyper-local influencers as well, is rising extremely rapidly. So a person who's very well known in one district may not be known at all 3 districts away. So the question, therefore, is really if election management bodies still know where the audience is or where the misinformation is, because otherwise the counters to this cannot really be thought of or positioned correctly. We first have to find where our audience is. And especially this is true where content is characterized by short reads or by short form video. And there's really no time that people have to go through lengthy explanations. It's the short form which prevails over a lengthy exposition. Opinion building is very often based on limited or selected information. Now, globally, also, there are these emerging patterns of dramatic political statements which are aimed at virality, again, via short video. So bites that are clickable, bites that are reelable or lend themselves to quickly being transmitted over WhatsApp. We see a lot of that happening, leading to more polarized, coarser, and shriller campaigns. Also coming in a lot of misinformation and deep fakes, which are videos which are totally untrue but appear true. And we may also see, of course, nefarious designs and coordinated fake chatter from geographies that are inimical to our country in the form of external election interference. And therefore, very, very quickly, recommendations for election management bodies. You may need to rediscover your audience, because ultimately the best cure for disinformation or misinformation is to give out the correct information. But it may not always be enough to do this on the conventional platforms. You have to reach the very influencers, reach the very micro platforms or very micro groups where misinformation is actually floating. And unless you know that they exist and where they exist, you cannot really address the problem. Now, one of the things that the Election Commission of India actually started doing many years ago was to use election icons, maybe for different reasons. But icons today, I feel, are very similar to what are now called influencers. And therefore, there is need to use them strategically and perhaps to cultivate these more of these icons, especially at the district and state level as well. Convince these icons, who are people who may be in different fields, but who are people who enjoy not just a certain credibility, but also the power to reach large numbers of people, even at the local level, and convince them to be available at short notice when required. The other important thing is, do not ever hesitate to be on social media platforms where the audience is, because that is where misinformation and disinformation have to be tackled. And leverage government media, of course, to counter misinformation at the earliest. Finally, and this is my last slide, I guess, media campaigns continue even in periods when there are no elections. And these may be designed to hit the credibility of election management bodies. Therefore, even in times when there are no elections, monitor social media chatter, monitor digital media chatter on a daily basis. Keep in touch with the state election offices, with the CE offices to monitor local media chatter at all times, and use all means available to counter this misinformation and attacks on election management bodies' credibility in real time. And I'll conclude by saying that, as we have said traditionally in India, eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. And we must do this as election management bodies throughout the year, every single day. Thank you.
Thank you to all our speakers for adding such a rich and a layered perspectives. Now we'll open the floor for the discussions and the questionnaire. Please. Yeah, sure. Mike.
Morning, ma'am. My name is Raghavendra. I'm Joint CEO from Karnataka. I would like to know from the elite panel, how can media campaign regulations balance freedom of expression with electoral integrity?
Yeah, am I audible? Yeah. So there are so many things. Depends upon the kind of media which is there, which is encroaching upon your freedom of speech. Depends upon what kind of violation, the kind of violation. There are so many things we just talked about. So it depends upon what kind of violation it is.
I think the whole gist of the argument that I was trying to make is that it has to be a whole of society defense, wherein different stakeholders are involved, different fact checking, independent fact checkers are also involved, and that's when because sometimes it can be difficult to ensure the institutional transparency and fairness. So for that, when different stakeholders are involved in the process, it was done in Argentina, and you create an ecosystem of resilience, that's when it will be when we can actually deal with the problem of this information pollution.
Very good afternoon to one and all. I'm indeed happy to listen to the panelist on the different dimorphism of regulating media campaign, because this is a ocean as far as I'm concerned. And I would like to have my own observation and the inputs from the panelist also in regard to the regulating media campaign. See, when we are going to regulate the media campaigns, there is a fulcrum of change of data rich and data poor communities. Algorithmic increase, the variations are taking place. The tech monopolies are also rising up. They are controlling over. Therefore, in such situation, how to address those issues to Professor Sharath, and then to Madam regarding the laws, recent laws, because many laws are coming up over in regulating the media campaign. At present, what law is best suitable and which country is following, you can throw your impetus. And you can also suggest some important mechanism for regulating the media campaign. If so, thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you for that question, and maybe I'll go first. I think, and I'll answer very briefly, and maybe we can continue the discussion offline as well. But I think it's important to go back to the basics and talk about the message as well as the medium. And once we become aware of a fake narrative, I think the easier part is to counter that, to frame the message that will counter that. That part is easy, and you have experts who will do this very, very quickly. What is more difficult is to find the channel or the medium in which you can effectively disseminate that message. I think this is an aspect that often is not paid enough attention to, because we are conditioned to think that we will have a message and we will then disseminate it through mass media and everyone will hear it or see it. And we tend to ignore this aspect. What has happened is that, from the era of the 1980s, when all of India used to stop for Mahabharata and Ramayana, and if you were traveling on a highway, then the buses would find the nearest dhaba or the nearest restaurant at 10:30 a.m. because Ramayana was going to air on TV or Mahabharata was going to air on TV. And therefore, you could be certain that if you are transmitting something during that 1 hour, during a break, a commercial break, or begin just before that or just after that, then all of India would see you and get the message. Today, we are an audience of one. Everyone is an audience of one. Everyone is consuming their own content in their own way. So, once you have misinformation floating around, you know what to say, but do you know where to say it? And you know how to say it? And that's where it becomes this challenge of developing, first of all, analyzing, getting to know where those channels are in a particular geography where elections are about to happen, what the particular fault lines are, what the particular segmentation of populations is. And then for each case, what the right channels of spreading your information, the true information is. If you have the channels in place, then getting the right message across is easier. But the challenge today, for all of government communication actually, and EMB's communication is a subset of that, the major challenge is that we have lost the channels. So I'll leave it there for now.
So regarding India's stand to control and regulate free speech and media. So as I discussed with regards to Singapore, America, and EU, Singapore is quite preemptive in approach. Very strong regulation is there, whereas America gives privacy to free speech. And if I say about India, India is striking a balance between free speech and regulation. We are emphasizing upon social media on platforms. We are giving them some kind of coordinated approach. If you see whatever ECI is doing along with IIIDEM, what I understand, they are creating a kind of a coordination approach. And also all these stakeholders, they are bringing it to one platform. Like they are giving WhatsApp access to voters. Like if you have some kind of misinformation or disinformation received, you can come and depose there. And there is a set of grievance redressal committees also they have come up with. So there is a kind of bottom-up approach now. Everybody is in a kind of a composite arena, and they can talk to each other. If you are not able to speak, or you are getting misinformation, disinformation, then also you can report. And there is a kind of a full-fledged framework which is making ECI, IIIDEM responsible for ensuring electoral integrity. It's unlike Singapore, it's unlike America, European Union. We are having our own approach, which is very Indianized. What suits India the best? It's my personal. Yes. Thank you.
Hello, I have a question. Myself, Gaurav Srivastava from Times Now. I would like to ask question to Sharath sir. Sir, usually I have a question I have framed. How can India reform the media revenue and platform economy to ensure financial sustainability of journalism while safeguarding transparency, editorial independence, and electoral integrity in the digital age, especially in terms of legacy media?
I really don't have an answer for that at the moment. I think it is a little bit beyond the subject to discuss. We can maybe discuss offline. We may have.
See, journalism, citizen journalism, now it is floating like anything. Understood? Each one can pass on the messages just like that. The mechanism, what is the mechanism at international level and national level? You need success stories, you have from there, and you want to regulating them. If you have any insights, you can share.
Okay, so the solution, I think first I have to clearly state the problem. The problem is that the misinformation travels faster and the correction doesn't travel at the same speed and doesn't reach everybody, right? So the point is that a proactive communication is required. And the literature suggests, from the behavioral economist point of view, I'm trying to tell you, that basically the literature suggests that corrections are not flowing with the same speed and they're not going. So just ensuring that the correction has to go through same pathways as the misinformation is a very big task. So, like I said, what is important here and how to ensure proactive communication? For that, international best practices may we have from Argentina and Reverso campaign, Mexico's Verificado, wherein what they have done is, we also have in India actually Project Shakti. But there are success to it. But what I'm trying to say is that it, it has to be, the system will have to integrate the media, the private sector, the civic society. Then you also have one thing that is to improve this communication also, it's very important that we will also have to work on media literacy and how we can actually empower the citizens and how we can increase their education, civic education, that they can actually differentiate between a synthetic media and differentiate if it's real or not. That's something that'll be key, that actually educating them.
Yeah, we are working on media regulation and political advertising.
Yeah, and transparent political advertising, that's already there. Yep.
My question, hello, I'm Advocate Mini Ravindran from Madhya Pradesh. My question is to Ma'am Goyal. Like she said that the freedom of expression especially in America, is a well recognized principle. And the courts are also leaning towards the idea of freedom of expression. Whereas in other countries, there is a restriction, like India as well, we have reasonable restriction on this freedom of expression. So I'd like to ask, ma'am, that the how are the other stakeholders, like the political parties, who are either benefited from such kind of campaigns or are on the losing side, and even the media houses, how are these two stakeholders having a share or have their responsibilities towards the hate speech or fake information, misinformation, etc. So if your man can enlighten me on that and the others as well.
Thank you. See, one thing, I talked about humanization of elections and striking a balance between freedom of speech and expression and electoral integrity, one thing. And the way it has been handled by different countries, there I gave you examples of America, Singapore, and European Union, right? The modus operandi of these three countries, which I gave as example, is slightly different. I'm never saying that America is only giving primacy to free speech. Only thing is the way we are dealing it with laws, with soft laws, soft codes, regulations, they are not doing the same way. And second thing is they are giving primacy. Why I said so? Because as such, they are not having codifications regarding regulations and all those things. Main player in America is courts, and they come when everything has happened, or when there is some kind of misinformation or disinformation. They take it, they tackle these things differently. And I'm not saying platforms are not going to be regulated; they are auto-regulated. See, this is a kind of what I perceive. This is a kind of a regulation which comes from within, and this comes with development maybe. And there, I am not saying they are not regulating. Only thing is the kind of regulation is different. Here we are regulating it differently. We are having soft laws, hard laws, and also IT rules, DPDP Act. We have come up with 2023. We are having a lot of laws and regulations. And Singapore is stricter than us. I don't want to compare, but the way the things are being handled is quite different. And because it suits a particular nation, therefore they draft rules and regulations accordingly. And I'm not going to criticize America or India or Singapore. They are unique in themselves, and whatever the requirements are, they are handling it accordingly. And all are giving primacy, importance to freedom of speech and expression. It only thinks that how they are doing it's different. I think that makes the thing clear.
Ma'am, I wanted to ask that how the political parties and other players, particularly the media and the political parties, because they are the media is the having a role in this, a major role, and the political parties either they gain or lose out on it. So how their role can be seen in this perspective?
See, presumption is whatever political parties are saying or coming up, disclosing, that should be right. It should be responsible. And if they have not done like that, there are allegations, there are cross complaints, then automatically they are going to handle it. And therefore, 2017 also, there was a Congress hearings also, which came up after Trump election. So that's another story. That's what I'm saying. How they tackle it, they are not going to see that if political parties are misusing or media is misusing, they are not going to do anything. How they do it, it's different. Right?
As we are already running a little ahead of time, please, ma'am, excuse us. Hopefully you are satisfied enough with the answers. As we close and draw this session to a close, it's clear that regulating media campaigns is not about silencing voices. It's about strengthening democratic signal over noise. With this, I would like to invite our additional CEO, sir, to conclude the session on a happier note. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. As you are aware that we had a very informative and detailed session on media campaign in election. So I would like to thanks the panelists, the CEO madam, and the august audience for their patience, hearing, and the interaction. So I would also like to thank the estimates panelists and the of the Argentina and the Antigua and Barbuda and experts. Further, we are looking forward this opportunity for the further discussions since the presidency is for 1 year by the India. So we are looking forward to more interactions. I thanks to the ECI and the IIDM also for the providing such a great opportunity for the interaction. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, please.